Hi, I'm Katie, and this is episode 97 of Ornamentations, and today I have an update on the Britomart sampler. I have a finish, a new start, some sampler progress, and some super progress on my sweet bag. I mean, can you see me beaming? I'm so excited about what I have to share with you today. And then there are also the giveaway winners from the last episode. If you've been following along with my videos, you've seen a lot of me in the last couple of weeks because since my last regular Flosstube, I shared a short introduction to reversible stitching to help you decide if you would like to undertake the Britomart sampler or another project reversibly and some of what that encompasses. I hope it was helpful. That's linked in the description if you haven't seen it, and then also a short video introducing the Britomart sampler and going over some of the features of the kit, the class, and the chart, which I'm actually quite proud of. It's large scale in full color and has some really beautiful photography. I didn't take the photos myself, so I could say that. And then also a unusual technical feature. If you're interested in this, please go and watch the video, which is linked in the description. But the bands are actually charted in layers, so you're not looking at that wall of different techniques, stitches, and colors at once, but instead you're slowly building up the architecture of the band in a way that allows you to have landmarks to count correctly and just to approach this in smaller and easier to grasp steps. So you go through it, building it up until you're looking at a complete band. This is the technical innovation suggested by Trisha Nguyen of Thistle Threads. I think it's going to make a huge difference in making it much easier to approach and stitch a mixed technique band sampler. I'm really looking forward to seeing how some of you experience it now that the kits are out in the world. But oh man, that video was actually pretty hard to film because right before I clicked play, I dropped the casket. I was putting it on a shelf behind me to film, and instead of putting it on the shelf, it went splat. It landed on one side and went splat, and I was so terrified that I had just wrecked my casket that I couldn't bring myself to actually closely examine it for damage until like an hour afterwards. So if I looked a little glassy-eyed, 1,000-yard stare in that video, yeah, it was because I was deeply traumatized by what I had just done to my casket, which thankfully was just dropping it. There does not appear to be any permanent damage, but really difficult video to film. Anyways, story time over. I do have lots of stitching to share with you today, but before we get to that, we have a couple of very quick kit updates. I do still have kits for Plum Street Flag Thief, which is a beautiful piece. If you just like some cross stitch over two, some happy colors, and some seasonal stitching, it can be either patriotic or just a beautiful color, beautiful summer stitch with some bright happy colors. Details in the description. And then we also have Britomart. I cannot thank you enough for your embrace of this project. It's just been amazing and a little overwhelming. The kits absolutely flew out the door and are presently out of stock. However, you didn't miss anything. I will be restocking. I am going to take as many people in the class as want to join it. So you're not gonna miss the sampler. You're not going to miss the class. There is more stock coming. And if we go through that, then I will just keep on going for as long as people want kits. This is not a one and done. Class does not start until September 15th. There is plenty of time to make sure that we get you all kits if you want them. So what to do if you missed the kits for this sampler and you would like one is go to the listings linked in the description and enter your email on just one of the options, kit only or kit with class. Doesn't matter if you haven't decided yet, just make sure you choose one so the numbers don't skew. I'm looking at that to help me gauge what I need for the next round of kits. So we'll definitely be bringing more kits to you. Please be patient for me. I don't presently have any TA on that, but they're coming. You haven't missed anything, I promise you. Another question that has come up since the release of the Britomart sampler is about the class. If you decide after the fact that you wish you had purchased the class option, that's fine. That's available to you. Use the contact form on my website to email you. I'll send you an invoice and you'll join the class. It's not, you missed it, it's gone forever. I do understand that you might decide later that you did want that instruction. I'm very happy to accommodate you. Not a problem. Kits have started to arrive and I'm really excited for you all to get to experience this piece and the chart, as I said. If you would like just the chart as opposed to kit or kit in class, this is presently in stock at the Attic, Sassy Jacks, Needle and Haystack, Acorns and Threads, the Crewel Gobelin in Australia, and Traditional Stitches in Canada. So give the store of your choice a call or go on their website and order a copy of the Britomart sampler. I'm really proud of this and I trust that you're going to really enjoy it as well. I am also already working on the class, which as I said starts September 15th. I always write the class as in like just a Word document. When I do the actual stitching of the piece, I take step-by-step photos during that process. And then when the class is actually set to launch, that's when I put it all together into one integrated file with diagrams, with photos, with the instructions, all in a clearly laid out format. I add video if it's needed. And that's when that all comes together. Looking at it again with fresh eyes long after I've stitched it allows, because at this point, this band is about 1.5 years away from my own stitching of it, so it's been a hot minute. And so going back and looking at it with fresh eyes lets me see if it's clear. And so I deliberately don't do that part when I am stitching the class piece. Oh boy, but this class is a whole different level of detail from what I've done before, so I am starting early. So far, the first lesson, which is nowhere close to done, has covered the choice of frame, pairing it with a stand, setting up your fabric, handling the filament silks, your choice of needle and when to use different types of needles, how to decide whether or not to stitch reversibly, all the different ways of starting and stopping your thread if you are stitching reversibly, and I'm only just getting started on the stitching. So far we've covered, this one tiny section of the center dividing element. So, it's a comprehensive class to say the least. This will be more than some of you will need, but I am very confident it will get everyone through this sampler, whether or not you are stitching reversibly. We are going to be looking at stitches, methods, the granular application of each of those things on every band and motif, how to stitch all of it reversibly versus non-reversibly, and oh boy, it's detailed. I'm kind of wondering what I've gotten myself into, but I think we are going to have a really great class and I am really looking forward to it. I know many of you are as well. Blah blah out of the way, let's get to stitching. 2 releases in the last 2 weeks has meant that I've spent a fair amount of time shipping, but I have been stitching too, and we're going to look first at my ongoing sampler whip, and that's Eliza Townsend by Cross Stitch Antiques. It did get some progress on this. It's looking stunning. So this is where I am. Last time I saw you, I was working on that center motif, which is now finished. I fully put in the ground using race stitch over 4. I filled in the flowers. Sorry, I can't see when the sampler's right in front of my face. I filled in the flowers with the light pink, the basket's done, the greenery's done. So that motif is completed. And then I moved over to the side. That top left motif is almost done. I need to fill in the vase. And then I am working my way down to the motif below it. Look at all that strong color. Isn't that just stunning? I love this. So this is being stitched on Legacy Linen 45 count jersey cream with an original silk conversion of Soie Surfine. That's in the description. If you would rather use 103, just remove the 2 from in front of each number and you've got the 103 number. But I really do love the delicacy of the stitches and the way that bright color shines out on that beautiful linen. This is the back. And then we're going to talk about some of my changes. So we've talked about my various changes up to this point on previous Flosstubes where I have shown this piece, but now that I have started filling in around the verse in this upper area of negative space, if you look at the antique, mine's quite different. For one thing, my verse is not nearly this wide. I deliberately chose something much smaller and shorter so that I would have more room to rearrange motifs, to have a little more negative space, which I'm very, very fond of, and just to kind of space everything as I would like it. So basically what I did is I perfectly centered this top motif. I did move the positioning a little, so I thought it would be about equidistant in negative space between the top border and the verse. That actually could have gone down just a few stitches now that I'm looking at it, but still pretty successful, I think. I don't have anything yet on those carnations on the border. I really do need to make a decision about that. And then the flowers on the side, I lined them up coming off that border motif, and then they're marching straight down the side as opposed to being staggered. That did mean a little massaging of the motifs and of the space to get them like that. There isn't enough vertical space just to stick them that way. So what I've done that you can't yet see is I have recharted the urn to take some rows out of it while keeping the general shape. I also ditched the little strip of grass that's on the bottom of each of these things, not necessary. And so that gave me enough height to be able to just line these up. I really like symmetry. And then that gives, or it should, when I'm looking at a complete piece, give roughly equal amounts of negative space. I also put eyelets in the stems. Those are mostly charted as groups of 4 cross stitches. I think I'm seeing eyelets in the antique, and you know what, whether they're there or not, I just like them, so I did them. That texture is quite distinctive. So I started with an Algerian eyelet, which would be 8 legs over 4 threads. However, that looked a little sparse to me. This is Surfine on 45 count, so I went for the full 16 leg eyelet. Man, does it look awesome. I love it. And I did do the eyelets as if I were stitching reversibly, even though this piece is not reversible, just because it's a much more efficient way to move through the eyelets on this piece. You don't find yourself terminating in awkward places. I explained that concept as it relates to double running stitch in the introduction to reversible stitching tutorial, but it actually applies to other types of stitching as well. Mastering reversible stitching can be a pretty useful skill just to have in your back pocket to pull out, because then you always have that there, and then you can choose how you're working through a motif for efficiency, whether or not the piece is reversible. This one is not. I know the back is really neat, but this is not a reversible stitch. Not reversible. that's reversible. Full crosses on the back. But really useful thing to know. I have just been talking about this in lessons, so it's on my mind, but when I started reversible stitching on this sampler, and I said this in the introduction to reversible stitching as well, real talk guys, I was miserable. I hated this. It was so slow. I was under time pressure. I was stressed. I was flipping my work over every 15 seconds to make sure nothing had gone wrong. I had no confidence. I was so worried. I was just sick over the whole thing. I don't know, what have I done to myself? This was dumb. Katie, why do you always have to be such a show off? Bad life choices. By the end of this, love, 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 and useful to the point where I am now deploying those skills on other non-reversible projects. Sorry, total detour from the point. Let's talk about color on Eliza Townsend, because last time I saw you, I said I was thinking it might be time to put in some blue. This is my Katie folio from Lou and Sue, and I pulled out 4 different blues that actually kind of verge in from light blue into almost gray. Yes, I am going to test them all. I do a thing thoroughly, that's for sure. So when I first started putting in the flowers, I was thinking, you know what? I don't want to mess with that beautiful pink, red, green dominance. This does not need blue. And then I got that concentrated color in there. It's still pretty close to the border, which is very, very strong. And I'm revising that opinion. This does need blue, but just a little touch in that vase, possibly the center of the flower where I've currently got my medium pink, and definitely in this urn. Used quite sparingly in these side motifs. It's going to lighten the effect just a little, because look at that, that's so strong, all that concentrated pink and red. You can't really disrupt that as your dominant tones with it laid out like this, and I think the addition of just a little touch of blue is going to add a little depth, a little lightness. It's going to be the perfect touch. So next time I hope to have chosen a blue, to have added some of it in, that we'll be looking at a complete side, as the border might actually need a little blue as well. So we'll see, but for the moment, stunning, 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 and going quite quickly now that I'm just down to the floral motifs. Like I said, do have decisions to make on the border. Light bulb moment hasn't happened yet. At some point I really am going to have to get quite serious about that. But that was some of my work, and then I also caught up on my 12 by 12. I'm so proud. Karen, how are you doing? I noticed that I didn't hear an update on that on your last Flosstube. Keeping you accountable. So after I had been shipping the Britomart sampler, handling questions, etc., I was pretty dead. I wanted something very quick, very easy, very simple, where I did not have to think at all. So I went for a repeat of Merry Little Stitches by Pamberry Lane. I've already stitched this. This was actually my January 12 by 12. And yep, I made and finished another one using the exact same threads. But seriously, he's so cute. And the great thing about this, so I stitched this on 45 count with Soie Surfine. That's the original silk conversion, linked in the description. Have a few little extra details on here. These are crystal pearls. Details on the embellishments will also be in the description. I have a fuzzy sparkly Santa beard done with fuzzy stuff. There's a tutorial on that linked in the description. And then just a little seed bead for his eye to give him just a little extra jazz, a little extra fun. And so this was great because, like I said, really quick, really easy, and then what a perfect gift. If you have a gift exchange, an ornament exchange, if you just need something quick and easy, I would really highly recommend this piece. Whether or not you use the silk or the called for DMC or whatever count, great little thing. So one of the reasons I wanted to stitch this again is because it was great for a gift, and my first version, ooh, that's a little wonky, especially at the top. I didn't really lace that too neatly. So this one I'm keeping. That'll go on my own tree. You will not notice that unevenness at the top once it's hanging on the tree, but I try to do better for gifts to other people. So now I have a gift version, which I'm going to tuck away in a box and pull out when I need it. These are most of the threads except for the dark gray I use in place of the black. That's 2671. That I actually pulled out of the threads for Eliza Townsend and then returned it. So it's done with it. So I now have 5 ornaments through May. I am caught up on my 12 by 12 and super overachiever here. Not really. I have started on June, which is a repeat of the first ornament I did in May. The 2016 Prairie Schooler Santa. This is my first one, which was on Coastal Haze. I did a, sorry about the focus. Come on, camera. No? Okay, there we go. So this was inspired by the brighter colorways that Lori Holt used in her Christmas stitching of Prairie Schooler Santas. I'll link the conversion for this in the description. However, this is stitched on the new Legacy Linen 40 count Coastal Haze, which is a slightly cooler, very, very light gray, and same red as used on Merry Little Stitches. Very different feel because of the different tone and value of the ground linen. So what I wanted to do for June was stitch it again. I'm going to use the exact same threads. I will probably change the body of the reindeer, just that's going to be necessary for it to show correctly on the different linen. This is Legacy Linen 38 count Faller's Teasel, but other than that, all the threads will be kept exactly the same so that we can hold these up side by side and see how those colors shift depending on the ground. I think you can kind of start to see that emerging already. So I'm hoping I'll have a finish on this for next time. This is kind of great stitching in the evening, very easy, not a lot of thought. I've already picked all the colors, so that's fun. So I plan to do that for next time, some more work on Eliza Townsend, and then on the really big project I've got going right now, which is what we're going to talk about next. And it's sweet bag time, my favorite segment these days. As I said, I did really have the jitters leading up to the release of the Britomart sampler, and so all that nerve-wracking anxiety really fueled a super burst of activity on my sweep bag. We're going to look at what I've done on the trimmings next. You do really want to see that. So cool. But drum roll please. I finished the complete background and all of that silk shading work. So excited. Look at that. It's amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. I really wish you could see just how much this glitters. It's crazy. It reflects so much light. The silk shines beautifully, and then the gold is just fabulous. It's beautiful gold, not like overwhelming and crazy gold. I think miraculously I managed to hit the balance just right there, but complete understitching on sweep bag. Not actually finished with the stitching yet because there's the stems and then there's a fair amount of over detailing that needs to go in. But before we get there, I want to show you my spool. My 25-gram mega spool. I finished the background on this with this much thread left on my spool. I measured it. It is grand total of 12 inches. Now, this spool wasn't actually technically new. When I started this project, I had dipped into it a little bit for some previous uses, but it was pretty close to new. There was no significant length taken off of it, so oh boy, did I go to town. I find that so incredibly satisfying. I feel like this empty spool is one of my greatest achievements in life, honestly. And man, I mean, I wasn't playing thread chicken here because I do have another 25-gram spool of gilt tambour in stash ready and waiting to be used if I needed it. But who to finish with just that one short length of thread felt like, wow, real meant to be moment. And it is just beautiful. So, oh, I also vaporized a full spool of number 4 gilt passing working on the trimmings, and I'm on to spool number 2. So we're really making it rain with the gilt threads these days, but effect, totally worth it. So worth it, if you ask me. So from here, there's not actually that much stitching remaining. However, I think it's going to take me a hot minute because I have to make some creative decisions here. First of all, there are the stems. Those are definitely going to be worked in gilt silk twist, and the choice of stitch would be easy here if I were trying to do something that was period accurate. They almost always used the same stitch, which was plaited braid, worked in a heavier passing thread. I've never really liked this look. I always think it looks quite heavy. You can get a much lighter look with plaited braid by using a lighter thread, like say tambour, or gilt silk twist, using gilt silk twist. So I could do that, but I have always, just as an aesthetic thing, favored the lighter braid stitches. So my plan here is to test out holly braid first, which was diagrammed in Jackie Carey's Elizabethan Stitches, if you're not familiar with it and you're curious. And then we'll kind of see where I go from there. I have a feeling that when I take a look at some test stems worked in gilt silk twist, I'll have a better idea of where I'm going there. So those are the vines. But then there is going to be a fair amount of over detailing on the flowers done with metal thread. They're going to get pearls for the centers of the pansies and the daisies. And then that giant tulip in particular is going to get quite a lot of over detailing with both gilt and silver metal thread. That's actually why it's so large, so that is really going to be taken down a few steps by more detailing that's added over to it. I have this picture in my head of what that's supposed to look like, but sometimes those subtle distinctions, super versus number 1 Lizarine, or do you actually want pearl pearl, or do you actually maybe want to use a twist and not a pearl or a Lizarine? Those little fine choices can really take me a while. I get really worked up into essentially creative dead ends and need to think and stitch my way out of them. I haven't had a lot of creative second guessing on this project yet, so I kind of think I'm due, and then I might be chasing my own tail for a while. There's very little actual stitching left on this. I think it might take me a hot minute, but you know, I also said the last time I saw you that I didn't expect to get past this, and we're now looking at complete filling and silk shading. So are my assessments entirely accurate? Maybe not. Then I don't think I've shown you this so far, so I did want, I love looking at it. I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am, because love it. I haven't really shown you the back of this project before, and it's worth looking at because it varies quite substantially from a lot of the other backs that you have seen from me. It's a real mess, and that tends to happen with full coverage metal background stitching because you're always pulling your thread into silk elements to end it, and then I did what Jackie Carey told me to do. I never do what anyone tells me to do, quite frankly. I guess that shows you how highly I regard Jackie Carey. I did what Jackie Carey told me to do, and I used the historically accurate method of starting my tambour thread for the metal background filling. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on camera, but that is knots. There are about 1,000,001 knots on the back of this thing. Not quite as pretty as the back of Britomart, but this is gonna get folded up, made into sweet bag, lined. You're never going to see that, and you're never going to know it was there. So I do try to maintain good stitching practices generally, but when they don't serve any utility, throw them out the window, go for what's efficient and what works. There's never just one rule with stitching. It really varies by application and practice. So, oh man. And now let's look at the trimmings because they're good. So all my frenzied, anxious activity over I must distract myself from the looming release of the Britomart sampler didn't actually stop with the stitching on the sweet bag itself. It also resulted in a whole lot of activity on the trimmings, which are actually almost done. And we're going to start with what are, drum roll please, complete tassel assemblies on both tassels and with extra Turk's heads, knots. I feel like I deserve a gold medal for this. So as we discussed last time, the visual instructions, the model, had 4 bits of braid and little, oh, so fiddly gold Turk's heads knots. Those things are tiny, teeny, teeny, tiny. That is Turk's heads knot next to a standard spool of thread. I mean, minuscule. These things are absolutely miserable to work. I did them all, and not only did I do them all, I did extras. Jackie Carey challenged me personally to add a few more to my full tassel assembly. She said that she always thought that just the 4 had looked a little sparse. Wouldn't they be better with 6 or 8? Okay, I couldn't quite bring myself to do 8 each. That is too crazy even for me. But she was right. Do they look banging with 6 each, or what? Love, 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 love. And they just look amazing against the piece itself. Sorry, you can't quite really hold them properly. But, oh, this sweet bag is gonna be mega. I am so excited. This is not, you know, being over caffeinated or had too much sugar or something. This is actually how I feel about the whole project. So you would think that a sane person would look at complete tassel assemblies with 10 zillion teeny tiny Turk's heads knots and filling in all that background stitching, and then you do larger Turk's heads knots here on the base to conceal the assembly, and go, that's some good work. No, I was still filled with overwhelming anxiety, so I did not stop there. I moved on to the bottom. And here my plan was actually always different even before I knew how horrible and fiddly and really annoying those teeny, 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 I mean, look at that next to my pinky nail, teeny tiny Turk's heads knots were. Something you see very often on 17th century sweet bags is that same assembly on the bottom. And that's what's in the project that Jackie Carey designed. Even before I knew what that was actually going to entail from a technique standpoint, visually, not into it. However, there's never any one rule for things done in the 17th century, so I had long, I mean, you can tell just by how faded the sticky note is on this particular. So this is from Sweet Bags by Jackie Carey. I'll link it in the description. There's a piece in the collection of, oh, the Burl. If I'm reading this right, yes, in the Burl. Beautiful silk tassels at the bottom. Still has the elaborate side assembly. The pretzels. Oh my gosh, I forgot the pretzels. Hold please. Okay, sorry, we're gonna need those when we recap all the fun stuff that goes on this bag when it's done. So pretzels, as I said, although those aren't pretzels, those are the, I think those are called the crowns. And then here on the bottom, luscious silk tassels. Look at the pop of color they give to this. So with all the metal thread faded and darkened on this piece, those really pop. But when this was new and before any of that metal thread was damaged, it would have been a really effective color counterweight to what's going on the top there. So yeah, I've had this marked long enough that the top of the sticky note is pretty faded, because this was always the iteration I liked best. I've always thought that these looked kind of weeny, especially when you compare them to just, there's a lot of density inside tassels. So that's where I was looking to go with this before I ever worked a Turk's head knot. A tiny, tiny, minuscule Turk's head knot, and realized what a horrible, horrible, awful thing that is. So I was already planning that way out, and then that just happened to coincide with what was going to be a lot more pleasant to do. Yay! So my plan was to do silk tassels, and then after doing the tassel assemblies, being in class, thinking about the design, I thought, you know, on the stork example, oh, sorry, just gone and dropped my place. Those are just plain. Very similar to the tassels that we did for Queen Anne's pin pillow, if you took that course. But if you did the wrapping really high, I thought you might be able to cover the top with a Turk's head snot, and then it would look really integrated into the entire piece. I love it when an idea actually works. So these are dangling on little gilt gimp loops that I made, and I've got all three done. At the moment they are too long, they haven't been fluffed. I know that I'm going to want to cut that down at least a little, but I want to have that length right now. I'm going to do a test assembly when the bag's together, and then I will cut them down to the desired length. You wouldn't want to trim them now and then be like, oh, I wish I had a little more length when you're actually looking the whole time. So they're going to dangle and swing and have these luscious, luscious pops of both bright pink silk and gold at the bottom. And it also solves a balance problem on the sweep bag itself. I did legitimately always know I was going to do that. It influenced my color composition on the design. So if you stop there, can you see how that's not balanced? You've got this really visually darker dominating element there at the top. The tulip is both large and the only place where those darker pinks appear on one side of the sweep bag. So if you left it there, you'd have a balance problem. However, if you have these great pops of pink running along the bottom of the bag, then that gives the perfect counterweight to the pink at the top. So it's going to look really great. It's going to balance out the composition. I didn't have to do 10 million Turk's head knot. I do still have to like really judge these tassels so that the silk sits correctly. They need to be brushed and fluffed and essentially played with and petted, but that's a job for another day. And then the darker pink color is also coming in another place. We're gonna look at the full, because I am actually almost done with the exterior trimmings. So bag also gets a twined edging that's made directly on it once it's assembled. I can't do that yet, but I've done almost everything else. The only thing that's missing is one drawstring. I have the top braided handle, top thingy of the bag. There's a word for that, I'm just blanking. And then I have one drawstring. I need another drawstring to match this one. These go into the side tassels. So on the top of the bag, you will have the top loop. This is so you do have in the end, you're gonna have a pretty good distribution of strong pink. You're going to have a little pop at the sides with the full tassel assembly. You'll have a nice counterweight at the base with those 3 tassels marching across the bottom. You'll have the braids at the top, and then just to really glitz it up on each side, you have a tiny sparkling pretzel knot made out of gilt wrapped gimp. So excellent, or what? So I have got an absolute fistful of trimmings here. Can't actually all hold them up at once. And yes, there are threads trailing everywhere because that's going to be what you use to actually mount them on the piece itself. But oh, it's coming together, guys. I am just so happy. I love it when I think of an idea in my head and then it turns out in life like I wanted it to. That doesn't always happen, actually. Very frequently it does not happen. So ooh, deeply satisfying, and I can't wait to bring this to summer school and get to show off the full dazzle effect to those of you who are going to be there. I can't wait to see this piece all together. Hopefully next time we are going to be looking at some very detailed flowers and some stems, but like I said, I have the distinct feeling that I'm in for some creative torture on this project. I have really dodged it so far. There's no way I get through to the end without stitching, frogging, changing my mind, stitching, frogging, changing my mind, and chasing my own tail for a good length of time. So we'll see what the progress is on the next episode, but oh, I'm really excited, and I hope you are enjoying seeing this develop as well, because there are some really unusual things here that you will not get to see every day. So fabulous. So fabulous. I love it. This is just awesome. I do have a lot of kitting that needs doing. I am cutting linen for more Britomart sampler kits because I already had a mega stock of linen, and what we're really missing are threads. And there will also be a new embroidery class this fall, so I'm in the middle of kitting for that too. So we'll see how much time I have for my sweep bag in the next couple of weeks, but I'm hoping some good progress and some good stitching. So fingers crossed. And then that brings me to the winners. That's giveaways from the last episode. The winners of the Pearl needle minders from Jackie Duplessis are Monica Aber 9505 and Diane McClure 6884. I have commented on both of your comments. Please use the contact form on my website to send me your mailing address, and I will get these awesome little bits of stitchy happiness out to you. And then the winner of the Plum Street Nelson chart, which was keyword Plum, is Marissa Lasardo 3480. And then one needle minder from the previous draw was never claimed, so I am going to redraw this, and because I'm really original, we're going to use the same keyword here, which is Pearl, and you must have a US shipping address due to export restrictions on natural products. For the next time, as this brings me to the end of this episode, I will have stitching. That's all the details I have. The last 2 weeks have really been a whirlwind. Thank you all so much for your support, for watching, for commenting, for giving the Flosstube kits and the Britomart sampler your time. There is never anything more precious than time. And the reason for that is that stitchers never have enough of it. It's something I feel acutely myself. So choosing to assign your precious time to something that I have created is truly the highest of compliments that there is. And I feel that very deeply, and I thank you for it. I hope that you have a beautiful next 2 weeks, that you have lots of wonderful stitching time ahead of you. You're enjoying some good weather. I'll see you again in 2 weeks for my next regular Flosstube, and until then, happy stitching.